The mainstream media moved forward with calling the election for Joe Biden, but the race is not officially over yet. The Trump administration already has launched several vote count lawsuits in battleground states. Joining us now to tell us more about the president's strategy, Trump 2016 Foreign Policy Advisor board member Ken Timmerman. Now, Ken is also the author of the book, The Election Heist. So, Ken, I have to ask you, do you consider what's going on now the election heist? And if so, could you explain to folks how this is working?
You know, Bob, it's pretty extraordinary to see this taking place right before our eyes. I wrote this scenario about 8 months ago, and I did it after years of research into the security flaws of our electronic voting systems, our machines and the software controlling them. And what we're seeing now is exactly what I put in my book, The Election Heist, which is a fiction, but it is not a fantasy. So what's happened in Antrim County, Michigan, is that you had a so-called glitch in the software that flipped 6,000 votes from Trump to Biden. They were eventually switched back. Why? Because there was an alert supervisor of election who saw that anomaly. It was a Trump county. It was going to Biden. She didn't understand why, and she investigated. That's exactly what happens in my book. And then you have two counties in Georgia where the same thing happened. And there we learn that election officials uploaded a patch from the manufacturer, Dominion Voting Systems, either the night before the election or the day of the election. As the supervisor later told the media, this never, ever, ever happens, which is absolutely true. You never upload a patch to the election software just before the election because it has to be certified by Democrats and Republicans in trial runs before the election. This also is right out of my book. So these are flaws in our electronic voting systems that I knew about, that many other people knew about. I wrote the book to warn the Trump campaign, and now the only remedy is manual recounts.
Oh, well, that's interesting. If they're able to track them, right? Because if you're able to do that manually.
Yes, the way that you track it is when there's a discrepancy between manual recounts and the tabulation number from the machines. Because let's say that you put the paper ballots back into those same scanners, those same tabulators. Well, they've been hacked. They have a new algorithm. They're going to show exactly the same wrong, mistaken count that they showed the first time. So the only way to detect it.
Yeah, let me ask you about this. I went on the Pennsylvania Secretary of State's website and saw an explainer as far as how they count the votes. I was kind of curious. Now, I haven't been there in person. I assume what they're showing me is legit. But at the very end, unless I am misremembering, and unless somehow I got this wrong, I could have sworn that they took a thumb drive out of the system with the data on it. And whenever anything is electronic data, I'm always a little suspicious because, as you know, you can massage those numbers. Is that part of how these systems nationwide work? Now, everybody may have a different system, but is that part of it?
It is, and that's supposed to be a fail-safe. The thumb drive is supposed to be the backup. On election night, they transfer the data electronically from the precincts to the county central headquarters. And that's where, people have talked about hammer and scorecard, altering the vote count at these data transfer points. What I'm talking about is something that happens actually at the precinct level with the voting tabulators themselves. I believe that is even more serious because you cannot detect it unless you manually recount the ballots.
And here's what's interesting, Ken. I've heard experts say if I wanted to mess up the American system, I would just mess up where they count the votes so that nobody believed the votes.
Well, good point. And that's very much what's happening. I believe the Democrats have used an all of the above strategy. They've used this technique with a last-minute patch from Dominion Voting Systems. We don't know if it was the company that actually did it. In my book, they are hacked, and somebody gets into their system and sends the patch to unsuspecting voting officials in the precincts. So they're doing that, but they're also stuffing the ballot boxes. We've seen that in the middle of the night in Detroit, in Philadelphia, in Atlanta, when election officials tell the Republican poll watchers, oh, we're going home for the night. We're giving everybody a break. Come on back at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning. We're going to resume balloting. And they come back at 8 or 9 in the morning, and all of a sudden there have been 200,000 votes
Yeah.
for Joe Biden and none for Donald Trump. Where'd they come from?
Well, they're going through the process right now, and we support that process. We want to make sure that any answer at the end is legit and that there is not a heist. So we appreciate
Absolutely
you.
right.
Thank you so much, Ken, for shedding light on the process.